Hello everyone, Britt here from Scrappy Boy Stamps, and today we're going to create a pop-up shadow box card with the Build Stage card die. Let's cut our pieces. This die set comes with a right-facing and left-facing curtain that not only cuts the shape, but embosses the detail. For the project I'm making today, I'll need to cut each of these pieces twice. Next, we'll cut this modified triangle shape, which represents the beam of the spotlight 2 times. And the last big piece is the valance that goes across the top of the proscenium, which again, we will cut twice. Moving on to the smaller pieces, you'll have one die for the can of the spotlight, which you'll cut twice. Lastly, you have 2 curtain tiebacks to be cut twice, and a pair of tieback tassels, both cut once. We're going to pair our stage with the brand new disco ball die. Now with this die, I used a fun technique that's perfect for getting that paper piece look when you don't want to deal with all the little pieces. Many leading die cutting machines on the market come standard with a rubber embossing mat. So using the proper sandwich for embossing, I created 1 embossed layer and 1 detail layer as it was intended. Now let's put together our pop-up card. You don't need any specialty dies to do this. We're just going to start with a 5-inch by 12-inch piece of cardstock. Next, you'll cut a rectangle opening directly in the middle of this piece, measuring approximately 4 by 5.5. You'll see that I used a generic rectangle die from my stash, but using a ruler and craft knife to create your aperture would work as well. Next, using a scoreboard, I'm going to score my piece on both ends, first at 1.5 and then 2.5 inches. Once I have all my score lines, I'll fold my card on each score line, with all folds going in the same direction. Once everything is folded properly, you should begin to see that this is the front and the sides of your shadow box. To complete your base, you will need a rectangular back panel measuring 5 by 7 inches. But before the front and the back of the box can be attached, we need a few additional panels to help with creating our scene. I created a set of 2 tabs that each measure 1 inch by 2 inches. To keep my assembly clean, I rounded all 4 corners of each tab and then used my scoreboard to help me fold them in half long ways. And while I had the scoreboard out, I also took this 8-inch by 1-inch strip of cardstock and scored each end at 1/2 an inch. This strip will also be used to help support our scene. The last piece to prep before we start assembling is this larger 7-inch by 2-inch strip. Both the back panel of the card and this strip were cut from a pack of paper that was already trimmed to 7 inches by 5 inches. That's why it was necessary to make these tabs that allowed me to use these pre-cut papers even though they weren't quite long enough. Once we have all 4 pieces prepped, it's time to start gluing things together. We'll bring the 2 largest pieces of our shadow box back in, and we'll apply liquid glue to the outermost flap of our front piece. Then we will adhere the 5 by 7 backing piece right on top of that liquid glue, butting the edge of the back piece up to the first score line. Now this is important. We need to adhere the 2 interior strips before we close our shadow box. I'll apply liquid glue to the tab of the larger of the 2 strips and adhere it to the inside of our box. I will then take the thinner of the 2 strips and apply it in the same way, applying liquid glue to the tab and adhering it to the interior of our shadow box. I'm not going to lie to you, I know that this tutorial is a little bit hard to follow. Total transparency, I was sort of making this up as I went along. I do think it becomes pretty obvious how all these things go together in the end, but drop me a comment down below if you'd like to see me revisit this card style and maybe make it a little more clear next time. Even though this is definitely not going to be a Halloween card, I did find the perfect background for this card in the Haunted Halloween 6x6 pattern paper. And yes, I do recommend that you add some of these interior detail pieces before closing the card completely. It's just so much easier to place these pieces when the card is still open. I got this piece of more modern wood grain from my stash and attached it to that largest interior strip. Once that's adhered, I wanted to close it up and test it a little before I applied the adhesive to make sure that my scene was shaping up the way that I wanted it to. And then with adhesive applied to the other end of each long strip, I'll fold the front of the card over to adhere it, with the most important part being to fold it at the score line closest to the front rectangular cutout. When you've ensured that the strips are adhered where you want them, you will wrap the remaining loose end around, adhering it to the main panel and closing your shadow box. What you should now have is a multi-layered card base perfect to build your scene. The first thing I want to add is our disco ball. As I explained earlier, I made 2 pieces out of this detail layer from the die set. By embossing instead of cutting my holographic cardstock, I'm able to overlay the black outlines perfectly and get the look of paper piecing without the labor. Then it was just a matter of attaching it to the base piece. Now I'll bring the finished piece to my card base. As you can see, the interior strips allow me to attach elements to the card in a manner that makes them look suspended. It's maximum dimension in a card that can still lay perfectly flat. I wanted to pause here for a moment and show you that this die was originally sized for an A2 card, but by reversing the design, it can easily stretch to fit a 5x7. I decided a little late in the game that I wanted to add some more of this purple pattern paper to the top of my shadow box proscenium. This is a do as I say, not as I do moment. As I stated before, it is easier to add these larger pieces before the shadow box is completely closed. Once the purple is added to the thinner strip, I'll use foam tape and attach the black valance to that strip. Now I know you can see that there's a little gap to the left, but it won't matter. We're going to cover that up. Remember when we cut 2 sets of curtains and 2 sets of curtain tiebacks? For this next step, we're going to mix and match the black curtains with the pink tiebacks. There's a placement guide embossed into each curtain, so layering these pieces is no fail. Then with a combination of liquid adhesive and foam adhesive, we'll layer the black curtains over the black valance on the inside of the shadow box. This style of card is all about giving you the unique opportunity to layer your scenes with maximum depth. This allowed me to double up on all of my fun Build-A-Stage pieces, and by layering up more than one set, create the illusion that my scene is bigger and deeper than it actually is. So I went ahead and layered up the black tiebacks on top of my pink curtains, just the same way I did to the black curtains and the pink tiebacks. And to finish off the pink curtains, I added the gold tassel tiebacks right over the middle of the black. You could definitely do this to both set of curtains, but I thought it would give a nice contrast if only one set had this detail. I've already used foam tape to attach the pink valance to the top of the proscenium. Then I'll use a combination of foam and liquid adhesive to place the 2 pink curtains and finish off my stage. Another thing I love about these pop-up style cards is how easy it is to push it so it lays flat while I'm building my scene. And once my pink curtains are adhered, our stage has been set. With our card base completely done, let's add all of our fun finishing touches. You might have guessed this by now, but today I'm going to be pulling out the brand new Country Girl stamp set. I couldn't wait to pull this stamp set out and color up a bunch of the images because this set was inspired by one of the most prolific and popular performers in the world today. After the summer of excitement over her absolutely gigantic world tour, I knew she was the one who had to grace our stage. I did leave the final piece of our Build-A-Stage until after I had placed my characters, but I knew this pop diva couldn't just have black can lights. So I took a metallic marker and I colored them purple. These lights are designed to shine all the way from the top of the proscenium to the stage. But since I would be using them a little bit differently, I went ahead and cut down the beam so that it would fit the way I had intended. I wanted a gradient effect on my beams of light, so I used 3 Copic markers, Y11, 17, and YR23, and gave them a quick gradient. You'll want to start with your darkest color on the widest part of your beam, and as you color towards the narrow part of the piece, you'll fade out to white. Then I went back in with my darkest marker just to add a little bit more dimension. Once the beams were colored to my liking, it's easy to assemble this piece by sliding the narrow end of the beam into the opening at the top of the can light. Then I simply used a small piece of low-tack tape and secured them together on the back side. With both lights assembled, it's time to add them to my card. I did layer over a warmer color of metallic marker for the cans because they didn't quite match my background. Since the Build-A-Stage die was originally designed for a smaller card size, I thought it would be a fun addition to take these lights outside of the scene and bring them down to the bottom of the card to fill up a little bit of space. I had a hard time picking which sentiment from the Country Girl stamp set that I wanted to use because I really love them all. I finally settled on Here's to a New Era, but there's plenty of other nods to this artist's song catalog like Shake It Off and You'll Never Go Out of Style. For some final finishing touches on my cards, these confetti shaker plates have really become my go-to. I mixed pieces from the Zigzag and Hearts and Rhinestones shaker plates. I thought they were only appropriate for this bejeweled superstar. As always, I made a second sample with this die set. I wanted to show off our recently released alphabet die set and show that you can use this Build-A-Stage with a vertical 5x7 card as well. I also just thought it was hilarious to use that particular song. If you go to the kind of trouble to make that card so you'll stay broken up with someone, you mean it. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for joining me today. We love you in our Little Crafty community, and we couldn't do this without you. If you want to get more involved in that community and you are not already, please come and follow us on Instagram and join our Facebook group. There you will find news, inspiration, new releases, and shipping updates. If you're interested in the stamps, dies, or paper in this video, make sure you check out scrappyboy.com so you can grab some for yourself. A link to the store along with all of our socials and all the places where you can find me are in the description box below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you give me a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any other uploads. And as As always, if nothing else, remember this. The player's gonna play, the hater's gonna hate, heartbreaker's gonna break, and faker's gonna fake. But like the song says, you just gotta shake it off. See you next time, kids. Bye.